All right. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
How are you?
Good.
Good. My name's Tami Enfield. I own Brand Yourself Consulting. My company just hit the 5-year mark, so I've heard all the hard work is over now after you hit the 5-year. Smooth sailing from here is what I've heard. I live in Northfield. It's a little south of here. Got 2 kids and a husband down there, and we service Minnesota and beyond, I suppose. Passion of mine is working with small businesses, helping build a brand from the ground up. I am going to use one of my clients today as a case study as I talk about the branding process and how we walk people through it. So if by luck is anybody in here starting a brewery? No. Well, let's imagine today that it's a brewery, because that's what I'll be talking a little bit about. Does anybody in here tweet? Yay! If we're tweeting any tips out today from the presentation or pictures or whatever, feel free to use Craft Your Brand MN. You can follow me at Tami Enfield or Brand Yourself MN. Okay, so local brewery. This is Austin. He is down at Forager in Rochester. I don't know if many of you have gone down there. It's a relatively new brewery. They opened about a year ago. I'm going to use their story as my case study today. So imagine yourselves opening up some sort of business that might equate to selling beer to clients. What is a brand? We heard a lot of good tips already, but how we equate a brand is usually what I tell people, it's what people say about you when you're not in the room. So your brand is, follows you, and it is usually, what people are talking about and what people say about you when you're not there. So it creates emotional connection. It obviously creates experiences, it's perception, it's your product, and it usually builds trust within, your brand will create a sense of trust, hopefully, but people can then trust to get the same experience or the same value or the same service as they come back, or the same quality of beer if they come back to your establishment or come back to you for additional services. Multiple brand touch points, which Fox Tracks can help you guys print if you need to. A brand touch point would be any way that a consumer can come in contact with your brand. A business card, your website, swag if you're giving out buttons, or it can be how you present yourself at a trade show, what your advertising looks like. This diagram is from a book called Designing Brand Identity, and it's written by Elina Wheeler. So I've referenced that book quite often when I talk about branding. It's a great book. I don't have a copy to give away. Should have thought of that one. That was a good idea. So when I walk a client through branding, I usually ask very specific questions, and sometimes people don't quite know how to answer them if they've just, gotten into business recently. But what do you do, and how do you do it differently? There's plenty of social media marketers out there. What do I do differently? Where do I find, my niche? How do I differentiate myself in the market? What feeling words, value statements, or brand promises are you making? So one of our statements is we don't take ourselves too seriously. The title on my business card is pretty big deal. I don't usually, people look at that and they're like, "What? Okay, what is this? Is this a joke?" Yes, it's a joke. But my kids think I'm a pretty big deal, so that's something. But feeling words, are you authentic? Are you fun? Are you serious? Are you eclectic? Are you, do you want your brand to come across as vintage? There's a ton of different feeling words, and then we walk clients through that. We walk people through the we will always and we will never statements. So I'll give examples of this regarding Forager Brewery, but we will always is just as important as we will never. Visual identity, creating that obviously is very important. Defining your voice, and by that I mean how do you represent yourself online? How do you write? What type of voice? Is it fun and slightly sarcastic, or are you, very professional and knowledgeable in your field? And then walking the walk. You can't say you're super fun and then, you're not. You can't, say you're trustworthy and then steal from your neighbor. So always walk the walk. And then always be documenting. One thing, and Pat's really good at it with this camera today. Documenting. Was one thing I always tell clients is even if you don't think you're going to use it, you're going to want a picture of something someday. So always be documenting the process, document fun meetings, document, something if you're building something, document that, document the process. So Forager Brewery, back to them guys. This is the building in Rochester. When I saw it, I was like, it is not going to make a very cool brewery. It is an old, abandoned, grocery store. How is this going to be cool? So when I walked through it at the beginning, I have a really hard time visualizing like plans when they're done. So they're like, here's the tap room. It's a big pile of dirt. And I was like, cool, all right. They did a great job. When they built their brand, they said, we really want to, brew great beer that's inspired by our hometown. It's inspired by influential community members. So they've brewed beer on who helped them throughout the process. Foraging local ingredients that requires ingenuity, local connectedness, and authenticity. So this was part of their mission when they started, and they've really, really stuck to it every step of the way. They foraged old 100-year-old barns and documented the process of their staff taking it down. Members of the soon-to-be tap room or future servers were actually laying tile, and we would document the process of like which part of the brewery they were working on, so they felt like they were a part of the story. Earthiness, obviously they're growing plants and ingredients for their beer in the back, on the patio. Family, it's safe and comfortable. So they do pumpkin painting, they do, kid fun, friendly events, they do open mic night, they really walk the walk and they embrace the community and bring them in. So part of their we will always statements was we will always, forage locally when we can. So this is a picture of their hop harvest. They grow hops in the back patio and then they harvest those and brew beer with them. Equating this, so because this focuses so much on beer, I'll tell you guys, I spoke out at the Craft Brewers Convention a couple months ago and was speaking to a lot of brewers. So in all of my comparables, I noticed today, I'm comparing them against other breweries. So I do love beer, but this is why it's all beer. But Oscar Blues, they're always statements, damn brew dogs are always cracking the whip over here. So they never take themselves too seriously, and all of their social media posts and voice reflects that. There's a beer sling locked and loaded over here for the golf course. So an example of, the we will always statements and how it reflects. We will never compromise. So like I mentioned, Forager embraces the community. They host local issues and what's on tap, and then the pumpkin painting. So one thing when you guys think of these, we will always, and we always want to be perceived as professional, and we always, we want to be perceived as high class. Maybe think of the dress code that you guys are implementing within your business, or think of what your business cards look like. I probably wouldn't recommend putting pretty big deal on a business card if you want to be seen as uber professional. Not that I'm not uber professional, but I like to make fun of myself. So, but now this guy, I'll be amazed if you guys know who this guy is. This is the owner of Stone Brewing Company. Yep. So he always says that he will, never sell out to big beer, and he did that by launching a angel investment fund for brewers. So walks the walk consistently, makes videos about it, talks about it, is completely behind the industry. Annie, the owner down at Forager, has become a really good friend of mine, and when I asked her what her biggest piece of branding advice would be, she said that you need to tell your story, choose your brand, and double down on it. Once it's out there, you stick to it and you remain consistent. So, and that was really pushed home in the previous presentation too, to be consistent with your voice, be consistent with your visuals, be consistent with your fonts. I would, maybe just choose 2 fonts. People really like to get font happy on a lot of things. Just choose 2 fonts and stick to those 2. But they did a great job down there living the brand. The visual identity, we had this set up prior to pushing it out, so we were able to create their logo. We created a word mark that can be used with or without the icon. The icon really resembles foraging, and it represents, the region of Rochester, the driftless region they call it, which has you drive down there and all you see is windmills, so it's pretty cool to. We had a contest of taking pictures of windmills, and then we were giving away swag, so we were trying to implement the logo within some contests and whatnot. But their colors are very, specific, which ones we will use, which ones we don't. For brand yourself, I use, browns, oranges, and white. That's pretty much my brand colors. A little bit of gray. So, but visual identity, so that the brand touch points for these guys, it's consistent. Their crawler labels match, their menus match the artwork on the walls. So they use chalkboard theme a lot in their tap room. So the menu looks like a chalkboard, which is right down here. On their swag, everything, they used real people, real local people. So when these swag pictures went out, we got a lot of interaction like, hey, didn't know Elise was a model, but using local people, local community was part of their brand statement, and they really pushed that piece home. Again, the website. So we launched their website before they submitted the plans to the city that they were going to open, because they knew it would create a little bit of press. She wanted 0 stock photos, so we used all architectural drawings and sketches at first, and then areas of, pictures of the region or whatnot. So making sure that your brand message and your core values also reflect on your website, as well as your print media. Once they opened, we were able to take some custom, photos for them of the beer, and still have some architectural sketches up there just because it shows a unique aspect of the brewery and the brand. But so walking the walk, like I said, you don't want to say you're a part of the community and then never support it. So this is a post of them tearing down an old barn and repurposing the wood within the tap room. And then there's a picture of their head chef and their head brewer actually cooking chili at a chili cook-off, within the town in Rochester. So supporting the community, being a part of it, because that was part of their brand statements. Another beer that does that really well is Kona out in Hawaii. They give a portion of their proceeds back to keeping the beaches clean. And then always be documenting. Like I said, I walked into Forager and I had a hard time visualizing how everything would come apart, but I stood in the same spot for every month after month as that was going up, and slowly just took pictures and captured the build. And this is Austin. It's a snapshot of a video I took of him just explaining the patio, like what was going to go up and where people were going to sit. And that patio reached people all the way down in Texas. Like some guy in Texas emailed saying that he was visiting and were they open yet, because this video had been watched so much. So always be documenting. You never know how far these things are going to reach. Here's a picture of their tap room when they got some big equipment, big tanks. Growing the crops that they had in the backyard. Here's the little babies. Before the kitchen was open, they were testing out recipes in the owner's backyard. So we documented some of the dinners that they had out there on Fridays, and talked about what they were cooking and what was good and what maybe wasn't going to make the menu. I mean, that's just as fun of a story too. Like, well, we thought was going to be cool and it wasn't, so we won't be having that on the menu. One thing that really works well when you're building your brand is to talk about the people behind it, so the personalities behind the brand. We interviewed all of the staff that was involved in building Forager and put out interviews and asked really, specific questions about like what their favorite piece of the brewery was and what they helped. But those interviews live on a website in the format of a blog, and then we're able to repurpose that content in different avenues. We can send it out in a newsletter, in an email newsletter. We can obviously tweet it out, Facebook it, put it on Instagram, Pinterest, all of that stuff. So we documented the hop harvest with a lot of pictures, explained, for those who don't know what hops are and what they're used for, we explained how it fit into the process of brewing beer. And then really talking about the people behind the brand. It creates that emotional connection, and people will feel excited to support it. So what about you guys? So how does this, how can you take all of this cool information about a brewery and apply it to your own business? Because a good brand doesn't just happen overnight. It's built and it changes. Like Pat said, it changes. And my brand is a little different 5 years ago than it is today. So how can you do that? Tell your story. So there's different ways to tell your story, specifically on social media, which is one of Brand Yourself's probably, focuses of social media, is obviously pictures. So we can take selfies. Here's me out at the Craft Brewers Convention talking to all those brewers, and I made them all take a selfie. So do you guys want to take a selfie with me now? Yeah, you do. All right. I'm not real good at getting everybody in, but no, we can't be boring, though, because we're fun here, right? Okay. Woo! Good job. All right. Always be documenting. Pictures. Another way to do it is to create what we call branded images. So we'll take favorite quotes that we like, or testimonials is a really good way to use branded images, and you put it. We use what we recommend to clients to use to build their own is Canva, canva.com. Really user-friendly. It has templates. You can, create your own. You can upload your own colors. You can upload your own fonts and your logo, and then you can put images together that are pinnable. You can Instagram them. You can put them on Facebook. You can tweet them out. So branded images. It's one of the things that we do for our clients. We put tips on those, like social media tips, or we work with a credit union in Wyoming and we do tax tips, or we talk about all sorts of stuff. But quotes works really well. Quotes work really well. So quotes that either you say or your staff says or somebody says about you, or Babe Ruth says stuff. User-generated content is another way to repurpose great photos. So I wouldn't, call this like the best photo, but what's really cool about it is that we were running an Instagram campaign for Vino to Go. Vino to Go is the company that makes these glasses. And they're like sippy cups for wine, you guys, for the boat. Like it's pretty cool. But user-generated content, she took a picture of it, said she was cooking something cool for dinner, and she had her Vino to Go glass there. So we used that picture and we regrammed it, is what we called. So we regrammed it onto Vino to Go's Instagram account. But using user-generated content. And like I said, with Forager, we encouraged people to take pictures of windmills within the area and then tag Forager, and then we would repurpose that. Or take a picture of themselves in their swag outside of Forager, and then we would, repurpose that content. So user-generated content is a great way to build brand recognition. And obviously blogging. So for those of you who have a website, I'd encourage blogging. Keyword rich is important. And what that means is that if your goal is to market to distributors, I have the word distributor in my blog article 1 or 2, 5 times. Don't want to make it awkward, but breweries, same thing. So whoever you're trying to target, what you're trying to be Googled or searched for, it helps grow your search engine optimization. It helps grow brand awareness. You don't have to be a phenomenal writer for blogging, which is perfect for me. I've always been really, self-conscious about my writing abilities. Blogging is really casual, so you can post some pictures and give a synopsis of something. You could actually post a link to an article that you read elsewhere and give your review of it. You can, again, the user-generated content, you can curate content on blogs. So great way to tell your story, and it's also a great place for that content to live outside of a tweet. A tweet, the lifespan of a tweet is generally 8 seconds. that goes down into the feed of Twitter and it disappears. So if you're not, tweeting constantly, the message won't be seen. So reviewing a little bit, like what we've discussed. What do you do and how do you do it differently? Feeling words and value statements, brand promises, the we will always and we will never statements. So a good example that I always use for the we will always and we will never statements. Forager, for example, never wanted to be described as yummy. They wanted to be described as made from scratch. So it was good that we learned that early, because otherwise this is yummy food. They didn't want that said about them. So it's really what you are and what you are not, equally important. Visual identity, growing that and being consistent, defining your voice, stay consistent with that, making sure you walk the walk, and always be documenting. The head brewer, I asked him what some really good branding advice and what he was most proud of, and he just, what he told me was that, you make yourself proud of what you give back to the world. So no matter what you put into your brand, make sure there's a bit of you in there, because otherwise it's not going to resonate with people. I don't know if this, we could try this. Okay, so social media, I get asked a lot of questions on the how-tos. How do I do this? How can I make someone an admin? So what I've started to do is I've started to create a social media learning center, and they're brief videos. And if Pat's okay with me showing this, I was going to give one of my little tips here for how to grow likes organically. Oh, shoot. What'd I do? Okay. I don't know if it'll work, guys. Do we have the volume on here? It might not work. Do you know where where's your volume? I'm on a Mac. Mine's just, I just pump up my,
It's Apple something.
I know, control.
Lower left hand, there should be a little speaker. And I don't see it.
No.
So
Well, this would have been really cool, you guys, I promise.
Is there a link to it?
Yeah. Oh,
there you go.
is it playing? Sorry. Okay. So I'll give you guys the summary of what this tip is. So when people like a photo on your Facebook page, it'll say like, your mom, your friend, and 12 other people like this. Because usually it's your mom likes it first, and then your friend does, and then hopefully there's people that you don't know that like it. If you click on the other people, it'll list everybody's name who liked it, and you can, if they liked your post because, hey, they saw your mom liked it, and they better too. But they don't actually like your page, you can invite them to your page. We've grown pages organically like that. It's free. It shows up on every Facebook post. But I'll post this on my Facebook page later so you guys can see it, or if you want to email me, I can email you the link. Anyway, the Social Media Learning Center, if you guys are interested in signing up for it, we're hoping to launch it in July. Here's the bit.ly link to sign up to become a founding member. I think we're probably going to give away a month free for people who sign up beforehand. I also have a branding worksheet if anybody's interested in that, and it goes through and asks the questions that I talked about today and gives you examples of feeling words. If you guys want that, feel free to email me and I'll send it to you. But yeah, that's it. Am I over time? I'm good? I'm good. All right. Thank you. What? Yes, there's my email. My cards are somewhere around. I can get you one after we're all done too. So.
Can you tell us how Forager is doing?
They're still open. No, they're doing really well. They're winning all sorts of local awards for beers. They just won a couple. What was the most recent fest in the city? So they're doing well. It was fun.